It's always dark in here. People who come often face danger.
A German grenade. Thank God it doesn't work.
War raged here a long time ago. Now they play war.
Grenade!
And even perform religious rites.
All we know is that there is nothing accidental in God's deeds.
These man-made caves, which are a significant part of Russian history, are tucked away deep underground. Odessa, a city in the south of Ukraine, a former Soviet republic. At the weekend, local diggers set out on an underground expedition. The most comfortable way to get around the depths of the underground maze is by car. These man-made caves are the world's longest, more than 2,500 kilometers long.
Show me the way. Shall I go to the right or to the left?
Normally, I go from that side, but if you make your choice, this is a shortcut, but over there the scenery is more beautiful.
Okay, I'll go to the right.
Locals call these pits catacombs. Stone for construction used to be mined here. The first excavation began some 200 years ago. Pits stretching over some 1,500 kilometers have already been mapped. Each year, researchers chart newly discovered caves that are scores of kilometers in length.
Oleg, how long is it? Hold the tape over there, and I'll take the other end to the arch. How many meters then?
420.
Okay, thanks.
The Odessa catacombs were home to partisan bases during World War II. Members of the underground expedition hoped to find one of them. The scientists who study caves, known as speleologists, have found another passage. They map out the newly found corridor. But they can't go any further. The pits are flooded. They can only continue with the help of diving equipment.
The water is too muddy. We can't see anything. Where is the clear, deep water? A bit further on.
The pits all look alike underwater, and you can lose your way in no time. They have to tread very carefully to avoid kicking up the lime sediment. It's next to impossible to find the way back through the muddy water. Alexander has been able to determine the pit's direction and height.
I'm freezing. We'll map out that bit of passage, too. We'll have to look for an alternative route now. We'll discover another bleach spot of the Odessa catacombs.
Vladivostok, the main Russian military naval base in Russia's Far East, some 8,000 kilometers from Odessa. Russian engineers built the fortress here at the beginning of the 20th century. At that time, it was the biggest and most modern naval military construction in the world. The southern Vladivostok defense front line was located at Russky Island. The only way to get there was by ferry. It was the military alone which knew about the existence and location of many underground hideouts for many years. Today, the island is open for visitors, and members from the Vladivostok Digger Club, Arthur, Vitaly, Dmitry and Alexei, carry out scientific expeditions on weekends. They explore military architecture monuments from different eras. The island has them all, including fortifications built by the military engineers of the Tsars, as well as Soviet underground hideouts.
If you keep to the map's directions and don't lose your way, chances are you'll find those installations. The problem, though, is that they're hidden somewhere in the heights, beyond the woods. It would take more than one attempt to find them.
The ferry to the village of Penza on the island of Russky reaches its destination in 40 minutes. The diggers came here to take a look at a unique fortification, the Vereshilov Battery, which for a long time had been a classified facility. It was a key element in Vladivostok's defenses. The purpose of these guns was to protect the city from sea and land assaults. Their range of fire was 35 kilometers. They were never actually used for military purposes, and the last salvo for training was fired in 1992. Now the fort is a museum.
These guns were cast in the Obukhov steelworks in 1913. Their barrels are almost 16 meters long and weigh about 50 tons. In principle, if you really wanted to, they're still capable of firing.
A complex of underground structures 3 stories deep lies underneath the tower. Lieutenant Colonel Georgy Shabut was the last commander of the Voroshilov battery. Now retired, he's the museum's curator and is only too willing to show guests the underground storage of shells and powder.
This is the 3rd underground floor located underneath the tower. It's 16 meters deep. The room was used to store shells, and here are the shells.
Each shell weighs nearly 500 kilos. A mechanical winch operated by 2 soldiers was needed to lift them. The soldiers did their job like clockwork. Between shots, it took them less than 2 minutes to reload the cannon and fire it.
When a shell has been loaded, the platform goes to the next rack. I'll show you how it's done. Shells of various types are on rotating racks. Which of them is loaded depends on the orders of the commanding officer. If you turn around now, you can see a rack containing armor-piercing shells.
Vladivostok's first caves were dug in the late 19th century. Russian military engineers built the world's most powerful fortifications in Vladivostok after the defeat of the Russian naval base at Port Arthur in 1905 during the war with Japan. Special care was taken to protect personnel from shells. The vaults were reinforced with 4-meter thick concrete. Underground passages were also built between the caves. The fortifications cost 73 tons of gold, which equated at the time to approximately $200 million. No 2 fortifications in Vladivostok look the same. Every fortification has its unique layout depending on a particular district. The fortifications have been built at the highest points. The garrison of such fortifications could defend independently, each holding out for 2 months. At the most vulnerable parts of the fortification, where the enemy could dig underneath, the builders dug what are known as countermine galleries. These are the deepest underground vaults of the fortress.
Soldiers would sit in these alcoves, listening to what was happening on the other side. If they heard someone digging underneath the fort, these were extended that way. Everything would collapse because of the explosion, rendering this part of the fortress impenetrable to the enemy.
The Odessa catacombs, scattered underground in all directions, are the exact opposite of the straight, cemented tunnels of Vladivostok. The soft, calcareous rock allowed the Odessa miners to extract stone anywhere. New mines were often connected to the old ones, creating a complicated network of underground passages.
This saw was found in this part of the catacombs. It still works well, and it can be used. You can see how it cuts through limestone. You can see how porous it is.
Until the 1970s, stone was extracted manually with the help of special saws. But the process became much simpler after a local miner invented a special stone-cutting machine. The average depth of the Odessa catacombs is 25 meters, but a million years ago it was actually the seabed. The remains of shellfish slowly built under extreme pressure to form a solid but light calcareous rock, layer after layer.
There are no forests around Odessa, so timber can't be used as building material. Bricks can't be made in the absence of coal, so people turned to limestone and began mining it as soon as Odessa was founded. New constructions in the city required more limestone.
Chalkstone was used for almost all the buildings in Odessa: residential houses and theatres, shops and restaurants, and even churches. Today, the Vladivostok fortress is abuzz with activity. Each day, skateboards tear up the quiet of Fort No. 7's passages. Skaters have taken a fancy to the central part of the underground fortification. Two schoolchildren, Bronislav and Pyotr, perfect their skills by clearing the hurdles they've set up.
We know that our grandfathers and grandmothers built the forts. They're part of our history. But we rarely come here to skate. As a rule, we skate here when it's just raining outside.
But most of the time, the forts of the Vladivostok fortress are quiet. In the peaceful environment of the central Russian Penza region, a hermit monk, seeking silence, dug out a small cave in a hillside close to the Sazan River. That was in 1901. Later, other monks turned the cave into Russia's largest underground church. In Soviet times, the structure was almost destroyed and buried. But in 2005, excavations began. Later, a senior priest restored the church, and now services are held there.
50 people can be present at a service in the temple at the same time. That is why the temple is considered the biggest underground temple in Russia.
The temple's history is full of mysteries. According to the legend, the cave was the beginning of several underground passages, which led far beyond the monastery territory. The passages have not been found, and excavation is still ongoing. Researchers think that church items may have been hidden underground from the Bolsheviks. Excavators have already dug up and restored an underground cell where a hermit monk used to live.
Now we are coming to a special place in our monastery. The old man would half sit at this spot. He would spend all his time in prayer. He would spend 10 years here. This is the window he was handed food through from the male monastery on the ground. The entrance would be sealed up. He would talk only to God and spend 10 years here praying.
Tatiana and Denis are geophysicists. They hope that special equipment will help them locate underground voids to support the rumors which claim the existence of the secret passages.
Is that so much well, there's a huge misunderstanding Libya within the Great Arab Awakening, a one-off detour or the maintenance of Western military and political intervention in the Arab world.
Download the official RT application to your iPhone or iPod Touch from the iTunes App Store. Watch RT live on the go. Video on demand. RT's live broadcasts and RSS feeds now in the palm of your hand. Question more on RT.com. The Odessa catacombs, the world's largest man-made underground structure. People extracting building stone here for over 2 centuries often found natural underground cavities filled with clay. Work was immediately halted in such places because of fears they could collapse. Local diggers take special care when examining such dangerous sections of the catacombs.
The remains of prehistoric animals can be found in the karst caves of Odessa. Clay preserves bones very well. We'll have a look for it now. Red-brown clay is a wonderful preserving agent for such bones. Here. These are fossilized bones. We'll give them to the Museum of Paleontology.
Odessa's Museum of Paleontology is one of the best-known museums across the former Soviet Union. Nearly 1/3 of its exhibits feature objects found in the catacombs. Scientists discovered that thousands of years ago, the area of what is now Odessa was inhabited by desert animals, such as hyenas and camels. There's also a unique exhibit, 2 perfectly intact ostrich eggs. They date back to the 3rd century BC. But the museum boasts even more valuable finds.
Here we see a very interesting elaboration of the bones. They raise interesting questions. This little hole has been the subject of debate. How did it come about? Was it the result of mechanical treatment? Some wonder whether this could have been done by ancient people. This is highly unlikely. There were no humans of any kind 3 to 5 million years ago.
Clay helps the paleontologists make discoveries, but it makes life much more difficult for geologists looking for an underground passage in the monastery in the Penza region. The clay is so thick that it prevents their instruments from examining cavities hidden below. So the geophysicists turn to equipment used for vertical electrical sounding. It can pinpoint underground voids at depths of up to 15 meters.
Ready? Let's begin. As soon as you're ready, just let me know. Tanya nearly got electric shock.
What was the voltage?
About 800 volts, I would have thought.
Scientists gauge the soil's electrical conductivity twice. They carry out one test where they think a tunnel might be located. The other is where they don't expect to find any tunnels. This is to help make the results more accurate. The tests reveal that there are unidentified cavities around the monastery. Denise shows Antoni, the church warden, the outcome of the tests and suggests that excavation work should continue. The Holy Fathers, however, have their own version of the underground monastery's layout.
According to the book, the monastery points eastwards. When we accidentally turned the book upside down, the underground monastery revealed an image of the Holy Mother of God. The 2 entrances look like her legs. The cell is the baby's head. The loop is the head of Our Lady. The church and burial vault are her shoulders and streaming robes. We don't know whether it's a coincidence or providence. All we know is that there is nothing accidental in God's deeds.
These man-made caves attract artists as well as scientists. Nadezhda Antasheva is a professional photographer and journalist. Some years ago, she often took people on guided tours of the caves of the Vladivostok fortress. It was then that she came up with the idea of an art project to draw public attention to the neglected forts. After 2 years' preparation, she began taking pictures of odd-looking red figures, wearing long clothes and standing against the background of forts and underground galleries of the naval fortress.
As a result, you get something incompatible. On one hand, you have current realities with those grandiose structures covered with stupid inscriptions, like so-and-so has been here. On the other, you have these creatures. So you get contrasting images, the lofty and the spiritual, as opposed to basic human passions.
Vladivostok's diggers now intend to draw attention to another underground object that up until now only special service officers knew about. The facility consists of several long tunnels and is a former reserve command point for the region's leaders. The facility was declassified in the year 2000 and is now completely abandoned. Digger enthusiasts intend to start a Cold War museum in these tunnels, and they've already got the first exhibit.
This scary figure, the diggers call it Borya. Me and the guys from the Digger Club made it as a sort of sample of what a long-gone age was like. A man in a hazard suit, wearing a 1958 gas mask. He symbolizes the Cold War years, a constant readiness for war.
Very little is known about the facility to this day. That's why Arthur and Vitaly scrutinize all the equipment and documents they find in the abandoned halls.
This is a teletype ribbon with some text on it. It's still wet, so we'll have to dry it to find out what it says. These ribbons are very important. They can help restore portions of the facility's history. They have names, addresses, and other figures. We've got a lot to decipher.
We've never been past this hatch. Let's go.
The official blueprints of the facility are still classified, so the diggers have to study each room themselves. Some are dangerous, containing worn-out electric power lines. But that doesn't stop the researchers' curiosity, and they proceed carefully.
There are 2 rooms there, connected by a passage and a wooden staircase leading up. It's very old.
The bunker was built during the Second World War in 1942. It was intended for use by the Primoria region's administration and had all the resources needed to support 80 people over 2 months.
This was obviously the communications room, allowing the inhabitants to receive fresh information, make decisions, and inform people about their decisions. This is how the territory would be controlled. Fortunately, there was never a real war in these parts, so the object was not needed.
By contrast, severe fighting used to rage in the Odessa caves. Explorers are still finding partisan bases down there. World War II resistance fighters operating here fought against German and Romanian troops. A group of diggers has found the camp base of one of the partisan units. Black dust is all that's left of the straw that used to cover one of the beds.
Here's something big, or there's a lot of something.
Let's try to dig.
Got it. I found... When the partisans were asleep, sometimes coins rolled out of their pockets. 1922.
Search here once again.
The diggers take every object they find to the small museum. The cartridges and small coins will be added to the collection.
These are the weapons the partisans used. They represent the types of armaments you would usually find underground.
The Germans were aware of the location of the camps, but they never ventured into the depths of the stone mines. The only exit to the surface was 3 kilometers from the partisans' base camp. All minor paths to the camp were blocked up or undermined. Sharpshooters carefully protected the main entrance.
Normally, these barricades were manned by 2 fighters. They were on duty for 2 hours at a time, and it was pitch black here. An untrained man found it very difficult to sit here under such conditions. Very often, the partisans saw the light when somebody approached the barricades from the entrances, and they targeted it. The barricades had to be unassailable.
The Vladivostok forts have never seen real-life fighting. But today they're frequented by members of a reenactment group. Rustam's team imitate Russian Marines.
Can't hear you well. Do you read me?
The role players' submachine guns and pistols are exact replicas of real weapons. The only difference is that small plastic balls are used instead of live ammunition.
The fortress was designed for military operations in the first place. Second, our grandfathers served here. Third, there's a military spirit in the atmosphere of this place. Even the people working here once served with me in the same division of the Marines. So we've got a lot in common.
In this exercise, Rustam orders his soldiers to defend a barracks in a faraway part of the fort which has been seized by mercenaries. Fighting breaks out in the fort's underground corridors. Although Russian engineers built the fortress more than 100 years ago, it can still be defended against modern weapons without incurring severe losses.
Grenade!
Defenders firing from this niche know full well that the enemy can't encircle them, because the corridor is exposed to gunfire. Also, they're protected by thick concrete.
Even a flight of stairs stops attackers in their tracks.
If someone appears from that side, the defender first sees his feet. That's to say, even if you crawl on all fours, the first thing you'll see is the defender's gun.
Several assault attempts have ended in failure. The Vladivostok fortress has proved once again that it cannot be conquered. People have a special fascination with man-made caves. The footsteps and flashlights of new explorers are bound to disturb the quiet darkness of the underground labyrinths for years to come. But those who've experienced the excitement of the trailblazers are almost bound to return to this subterranean world again and again.